Very good to meet you.
This map.
Yes, this map right here. This map right here.
This map.
Josh, how you doing?
Terry,
Trying to be respectful. Trying to be respectful. Trying to keep one step ahead of my friend.
I think it's moving.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know, man. I'll be advised.
Back for a brief plans about 10 days ago, a business trip to hold on 4 days, and then the first thought of
on the other end.
Is that right?
Wherever it is. One place.
Got to work that. And I heard what you were doing too. You were working too.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Hi, Terry Johnson.
Good morning. Can I start? Sure, man.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You know Bobby Boy?
He told me to say, my extension, 62.
Not to catch you totally by surprise, there will be recent memento on behalf of the presentation at the end of my presentation.
No such thing.
It commemorates 1 year later.
All right. What do we have to do to get this show started? You got everybody here.
Secretary Watts.
We just say, would you please take your seats?
She's on her way.
My daughter called me just to tell me she was sitting in Japanese class.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats, please, we are ready to begin.
Speaking Japanese.
Good morning.
Hey, how you doing, bro? Glad to see you.
Thank you very much. I am extremely pleased to be here this morning to introduce a very distinguished program, but most importantly to be surrounded, as I look at all of these board members in particular, by such energy and dedication. I've never seen you all together in one place before, and knowing each one of you individually and what you commit to your work, again, the energy level in this room is probably as high as any room that I have been in the last 20 months, including being in a room alone with the governor, which is probably about as high an energy level as any one individual possesses. I would like now to introduce the president of Thomas Nelson Community College, Dr. Templin, for some welcoming remarks. Dr. Templin.
Governor Bliles, Secretary Watts, members of the General Assembly, board members and commissioners of the Virginia Departments of Transportation, Aviation, and the Virginia Port Authority, and other conference guests. On behalf of the College Board, and the faculty and staff, and the more than 6,500 students of Thomas Nelson Community College, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the Virginia Peninsula, to Hampton, and particularly to our college campus. In this bicentennial year of the American Constitution, we are reminded that our nation's greatest leaders were often guided by visions of the future that required substantial investments at the moment to assure our welfare and prosperity of the people for the future. As the graduating high school class of the year 2000 enters public school this year, it's no accident that Virginia's leadership once again focuses upon improving our state's ability to be increasingly economically competitive in the 21st century by making significant investments in the Commonwealth's educational and transportation systems. We are especially delighted that our college was chosen for today's conference, for it underscores the great willingness of Virginia's community colleges to serve as active partners with our colleagues in the transportation departments in the quest to contribute to the state's economic development. I wish you great success in your deliberations today. Our campus is yours. Classes don't begin for the fall term until late next week, so you won't see many of our students. But today's the opening session for our faculty, and if your schedule permits, you're welcome to attend a reception in front of the administration building at the Circle of Flags between 10:45 and 11:45. I know you have a busy schedule, but you're invited to join us. Again, welcome to Thomas Nelson Community College, and please accept our very best wishes for a successful conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your hospitality and for the excellent accommodations. And now, Governor, it is my privilege to introduce in the next, I believe we've set approximately an hour, the three heads of your major transportation program. As I introduce each of them, I would like to emphasize just one aspect about their leadership and their selection in carrying out the program that is a hallmark of many of the people that you have encouraged and supported in their service to government. Introducing first then our Commissioner of our Department of Transportation, Ray Patel. Ray is an example of the governor reaching out to people who had served in many aspects in our Commonwealth's government, knew many different features, many different agencies, and had that kind of an overview to bring to a program that was going to be the hallmark of much of your thrust and much of your administration, and bringing it to an agency with 10,000 plus professionals who, with the management skills that they possessed and the additional insight brought then from other aspects of management and government, I think to a woman, to a man, have produced magnificently in this last year, year and a half, in bringing forth a new exciting program, a program that is definitely based on what we can do with the resources instead of, unfortunately, being too often having to deal with very limited resources. Commissioner Patel, I commend your management in bringing forth this program, but most importantly, of course, I commend the individuals within the department who are doing so much to bring forth a very exciting, dynamic, and most importantly, a program full of results. May I introduce then our Commissioner Ray Patel.
Thank you very much, Secretary Watts, Governor Beliles, ladies and gentlemen. If I can get the house lights down, we will begin this presentation. It's a very great pleasure to be here to make this presentation today, and the theme of this presentation will be Transportation 1 Year Later. We do borrow to some extent for the whole 20 and a half months of this administration, but essentially we're talking about the results of the program administered by the Department of Transportation during the past year since the special session of the General Assembly. By way of overview, let me remind you that Virginia has the third largest state-maintained highway system in the United States, following only North Carolina and Texas. We have now 54,006 miles of roadway and 115,407 miles of centerline roadway, of lane miles. In addition, we also have the responsibility for providing funding and technical assistance to 31 transit properties and 17 ride-sharing programs. We provide financial assistance and monitoring of 8,696 urban miles of roadway, and we now have the responsibility for management of the Commonwealth Transportation Trust Fund, which for the first time dedicates funds for construction improvements and for improvements in transit, ports, and airports. By way of a very general overview of our funding situation, let me show this first graphic, which was the same graphic that I showed to the General Assembly in January of 1986 when this administration took office. The prognosis for funding was bleak, with substantial declines being projected in all administrative systems. As we worked through the year and worked with the Commission on Transportation in the 21st century, it was determined that we would virtually exhaust all funds for construction between the years 1991 and 1992. Today, the situation is substantially different. We have a reliable and stable source of funds. The funds for all systems are now in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And for the first time, we will be able to plan and to produce the kind of transportation improvements that are called for in the 6-year program. Of course, our department is multidimensional in its character. We also provide funds for mass transit, and you can see that the transit funds have virtually doubled. Funding now for ports and airports from the Transportation Trust Fund. This graphic will show you that over the next 6 years, ports will receive about $105 $58.3 million, and airports about $60.3 million. The bulk of our concern in the Department of Transportation has been with the construction program for highways. Here's what we are buying with those new revenues that are available to us. In the fall of 1985, we had 352 projects underway with contract balances of about $472 million. By the fall of 1988, we expect to have underway 746 projects valued totally at $1.5 billion with outstanding contract balances of $978 million. Here we've compared the numbers of projects that were advertised in 1985 before the various transportation initiatives and today in 1987. And you can see the increase in the number of projects over the year from 371 to 420, about a 20% increase in the number of projects being advertised. And you can also see the monthly totals are increasing from the 20s well into the 30s each month. Similarly, there's been an increase in the dollar value of those projects advertised, and here again is a comparison of the dollar values for 1985 and 1987, showing an increase from $483.7 million to $632 million in 1987. We've often been asked where's the beef in the highway construction program, and I think the next two slides that I will show you will provide very dramatic answers. In this slide, we see the 1987-88 funding levels by district before the various transportation initiatives and after. And you can see a very, very substantial increase from $121.4 million to $526.3 million. If we look at those same dollars, the same projection by system, you'll see that there is a significant distribution between the primary, secondary, and urban systems of that same dollar figure. Of course, getting ready for construction is also a very involved process, and this slide gives you an indication of the amount of preliminary engineering that was going on in 1985 and 1987. In 1985, we were spending about $25.5 million annually. In 1987, we were spending about $403 million. Also in 1985, we had about $80 million in projects out to contract engineering firms for assistance. We have virtually doubled that with an outstanding contract balance of about $150 million with consulting engineering firms. In the right-of-way area, the trends are up substantially as well. The four indicators that we use of activity in right-of-way are appraisals of property, parcels, negotiation of individual parcels, relocation of individuals and businesses, and projects released for advertisements. And you can see in this trend, in this graphic, the trends are up in all of those areas. A primary charge that was given to the department governor was to accelerate the construction program, and I'm pleased to report that the indicators in this area are very good as well. We now expect to complete all of the present-day needs on the state's highway system within 12 to 13 years, rather than the 20 to 40 years that was originally projected prior to the transportation initiatives. We have accelerated all of the projects on the 6-year program now by about 6,100 project months, and we have added 1,000 projects to our active project inventory. Perhaps the best indication of what acceleration can do is in this slide, which shows you the status of Suicide Strip, which you identified as the #1 critical project in the state. Before the transportation initiatives, we had scheduled only $6 million for expenditure in the 6-year program. 2 of the 10 construction sections that we had identified were scheduled for work. We did not anticipate that project to be completed until the year 2010 at the very earliest. Today, we have programmed $28.5 million in the 6-year program. Every bit of the right-of-way on that project has been purchased and cleared for construction. Final construction plans are either ready or can be made ready within 90 days, and we have scheduled completion of that project by July of 1993 or sooner if additional funds are available. At the time of the special session, a lot of questions were being raised regarding the ability of the department to manage the new program, whether or not the construction industry could absorb the work, and whether or not this work could be put out efficiently. I think the indicators in this area are very good as well. Here on this slide you see our quarterly bid price trends indexed to 1987. And you see this year, in the second quarter of 1987, our average prices are very similar to the prices we were receiving in the first quarter of 1986. In terms of the number of bids per project, we've been extremely pleased to see these increasing. From the very smallest projects, where we were receiving about an average of 2.7 bids in 1985, we're now receiving about 3.8 bids per project. And in our largest projects, you'll see the greatest increase from an average of 4.1 bids per project in 1985 to 8.8 bids per project in 1987. We have also seen an expansion and stabilization of the construction industry. Pre-qualified contractors are up from 640 in 1984 to 685 in 1987. Out-of-state contractors increased slightly from 270 to 280. We have attracted 7 new international contractors who are seeking work primarily on major bridges and tunnels. And we have seen the expansion and stabilization of existing contractors doing work in Virginia. And we think it's a very good record to show that Virginia-based contractors have maintained their share of the market. In terms of a percentage of projects undertaken by in-state contractors, the percentage for 1985 and 86 is stable at about 94% of all construction activity. In the department, we have also improved our construction management. We have improved monitoring of the contractor progress by use of field computers. We have undertaken much stricter enforcement of the 10% project schedule requirement. That is, contractors must stay within 10% of their construction schedule, or they are taken off our bidders list for a period of 90 days or until they get within 10% of the project schedule. We have made greater use of that sanction to ensure that contractors do stay on schedule. As a result, we have seen reduced defaults and greatly fewer shutdown days on projects. There was also a great deal of concern at the time about the potential for fraud and collusion in this large construction program. I'm pleased to report today that Virginia is the first state to have established a full-time unit for anti-fraud and anti-collusive activities. We have established a 5-person interdisciplinary team with backgrounds in economics, financial analysis, construction management, engineering, and contract administration. That team has already received specialized training from the FBI and from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and we are working rapidly to develop our bid analysis management system and its enhancement, the BAMS Plus system, which not only will help us spot tendencies for fraud and collusive activities, but will also help us monitor the economics of the construction marketplace. While we have undertaken a great deal of construction activity and spent a great deal of time on accelerating and expanding that construction activity, we have not forgotten maintenance of the system as well. We have undertaken a number of maintenance improvements. Particularly, we have established a quality assurance unit which now places qualitative as well as quantitative criteria on maintenance activities. We've expanded training and safety programs, working particularly hard on work zone safety to ensure the safety of our employees in construction work zones as well as safety of the traveling public. We have consolidated all of our emergency services that were scattered throughout the department into one maintenance section. We have improved our productivity in the field through enhanced communications, and we have increasingly relied on contracts with the private sector for maintenance, especially in the areas of landscaping, bridge painting, snow removal, mowing, road resurfacing, and culvert installation. Of course, maintenance is a year-round activity, and we have focused very heavily on maintenance in the winter as well, particularly on snow and ice control. If you recall, last year we had the snowiest winter in history in Virginia, and we spent nearly $40 million on snow removal and ice control activities. We did identify during the winter a number of gaps in our snow removal and ice control programs. So we undertook in August a very extensive training program to train 80 people from around the state in a 16-hour program on the latest in snow removal technology. Those 80 people are now in the field providing a 6-hour training program for the 1,000 plus supervisors who work in snow and ice control activities. And those 1,000 supervisors will then conduct a half-day dry run for the 2,500 equipment operators, focusing on routes, calibration of equipment, and the latest techniques and technology in chemical applications. We also have a concern for the environment, and following up on a pledge that I made to you last spring, we now have all of our chemical storage undercover or on impervious pads. We have programmed in our biennial budget the construction of 42 new storage facilities for those chemicals, and we now project that all of our chemicals will be stored in permanent buildings by 1992. We've undertaken a number of initiatives to complement the construction and maintenance programs, and I've categorized these in 4 areas: engineering, management, communications, and human relations. In the engineering area, of course, I've reported a number of times on the compression of our preliminary engineering activities. We can now report that we have achieved generally a 20% reduction in preliminary activities, in preliminary construction activities. We have developed and we are now using standard plans for bridges and for traffic signals. We have developed a new urban program manual that gives all of the information urban localities need to work with our department to put all that information in one place. We have double shifted the use of our computer-assisted drafting and design equipment. The first double shifting in roadway design occurred in March of 1986, and within the next several months we will double shift our bridge design activities as well. We are also moving towards decentralization of CAD equipment to our district design offices. We have re-emphasized and expanded our transportation planning activities statewide, and we have implemented new traffic management, traffic improvement programs in each district. In the area of management governor, we believe that the key elements of a productive and superior performing organization is close customer contact, a constant bias to innovation, and efficiency and productivity in all of our operations. In order to promote an innovative environment, we have undertaken a very conscious process of decentralization, moving the authority for decision-making where the operation takes place, making certain that the central office carries out those activities that can be carried out most efficiently on a centralized basis, but also focusing on the establishment of policy, coordinative procedures, and accountability mechanisms, with the field offices having the bulk of the responsibility for carrying out operations in construction and maintenance activities. We've established a productivity improvement center, which is emphasizing value engineering and inspection in depth and productivity experiments. We've expanded the role of the Highway and Transportation Research Council located at Charlottesville, and for the first time are bringing them more and more into doing applied research for the department rather than basic research on transportation matters. We have altered our spring management conference from a series of technical conferences to a management conference focusing on innovation and creativity in the department. And we are placing a great deal of reliance on our employee suggestion program recognizing that productivity in an organization as large as the Department of Transportation generates up as well as being imposed from the top. We believe this graphic does indicate very well the productivity in the department in terms of employees per project and employees per $1 million of work underway. This graphic indicates that in 1985 it required 5.6 people to manage each construction project, and it required 2.3 people for each $1 million of construction underway. By 1987, we expect to reduce that number to 3.8 people per project and 1.8 people per $1 million. Thus, while we have virtually a doubling in our construction program, we will have about 22% fewer employees per $1 million of construction. We also pledged to the General Assembly a goal to find ways to reduce maintenance and administration expenses of the department by 5%. We reported in February on plans to reduce those expenditures by more than $25 million, and we are well on the way to achieving those savings, $25 million that we'll be able to spend on construction activities. We've placed a great deal of emphasis on improving communications both internally and externally. Externally, we have begun a series of local government roundtables. We have met twice now with each local government with which we deal in each district, and those meetings will continue on an annual basis. We have met with the congressional delegation a number of times with regard to the new Surface Transportation Act. We have been meeting with construction industry, with utility providers, with the consultant industry, with developers, and with traffic reporters. Internally, our communications have been enhanced as well. We've created an Office of Policy Analysis, Evaluation, and Intergovernmental Relations, focusing particularly on improving communication with the local governments with which we work, other state agencies, and federal agencies. We've reorganized and expanded our Public Affairs Office to help present a better image of the department. We've established a new citizen hotline so that any citizen in the state can cut through all of the bureaucracy in the department by use of a single toll-free telephone number to report safety hazards or maintenance problems. We've placed great emphasis on clarity in written communications and established a writing course for all people who prepare written reports within the department. We've established a communications task force to take an ongoing look at our communications efforts, and we have pulled together all of the senior leadership of the department into a leadership forum to exchange ideas and information on a regular basis. The leadership forum meets 6 times a year. We have emphasized our human resources in the department by reorganizing our human resources function, by implementing a number of new employee training programs. Particularly, I'd like to thank the Virginia Community College system for the work that they did with us on training all of our new construction inspectors and materials technicians. We have made a number of major changes to promote affirmative action within the department, both in our hiring and in our contracting. We've established a cooperative education and internship program, and this summer we had 35 co-op students and interns, 65% of whom were minorities and women. We have enhanced our employee recognition program, and we have implemented an ongoing process of goal setting and identification of mission, both for the department generally and for each unit within the department. We've also placed a great deal of attention on the kinds of values that we believe employees in the Department of Transportation ought to value. And as employees, we value quality in our products, integrity in our working relationships with others, responsiveness to the people that we serve, the individual worth of each and every person within the department. We value initiative, innovation, teamwork, and loyalty. And above all else, Governor, we value results. In summary, the Virginia General Assembly and under your leadership have taken a number of very historic and courageous steps to meet the transportation needs of the state today and well into the 21st century. We are in the process of implementing these programs and policies. We believe that they are working, and we have accepted a challenge to continue to adapt, to innovate, and to progress in all of our transportation activities. Thank you very much, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor, if I may impose for just one more minute, after 1 year, we know that your transportation initiatives have been focused on bringing a lot of new people into Virginia, both in terms of their businesses and in terms of tourism. We would like to present you with the memento of the transportation program after 1 year, focusing on your attempt to attract new people and new industry to Virginia. The quote on our Welcome to Virginia sign says, "Transportation, the efficient movement of our people and their enterprise, is as fundamental to our economy as the air is to our lives. Transportation, it is the lifeline to our future." Gerald Balaus, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. Again, in continuing to introduce the people who are leading the program, Ray, I compliment you again at bringing, I believe, new pride to the terminology of a professional bureaucrat, with a good professional bureaucrat. Another aspect of the program, however, has been carried out under the leadership of individuals who have given very freely from their, as private citizens, to this initiative. Before introducing our next speaker, I would like to acknowledge the great contribution given by Josh Darden in chairing the Commission on Transportation in the 21st Century. Josh, I know that you have always been available at the telephone. You have been in every corner of this state, spending many, many hours in fostering the kind of support and communication growing out of true grasp and understanding for the needs in this Commonwealth, and with your both dedication as well as a spirit of openness, constructive progress has made such a difference in the individual's acceptance of the job that had to be done. And I do want to compliment you very much, Josh, on all of the hours that you, and weeks and months that you have devoted to this effort. Our next speaker, as many board members, represents that fine tradition that I have just complimented Josh upon. Collister Johnson is the Vice President of Presidential Airlines. He is Chairman of the Virginia Port Authority Board. He receives a little bit of assistance from its Executive Director, Bobby Bray. But in presenting the progress of the Virginia Port Authority, and it is a very exciting story full of a lot of announcements of firsts, we have asked Collister this morning to present that progress report, again in part out of the acknowledgement of how important it has been to have the talents of so many private citizens behind this effort. Collister?
Secretary Watts, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, Governor Balaus, members of the General Assembly, commissioners of the Virginia Departments of Transportation and Aviation, my fellow commissioners on the Port Authority, it's my real pleasure to welcome you here at Hampton Roads and to brief you on the status of Virginia's ports. What I'd like to do today is to focus on several things. One is where we have been historically, two, where we are going in the future, and three, how we intend to use the Commonwealth Port Fund to advance and enhance the ports of Virginia. Since 1983, the Port of Hampton Roads has experienced an extraordinary increase of almost 90% in general cargo tonnage. from 2.6 million tons to an estimated 5 million tons by the end of 1987. This unprecedented growth results from several key strategic decisions made by the leadership of the Port Authority and the Commonwealth during the last several years. First, the General Assembly mandated a unified administration of the Port of Hampton Roads, eliminating the intra-terminal competition which had previously plagued the port. Without unification, there's no question that this growth would not have been possible. Second, deregulation of the shipping and railroad industries permitted the carriers to quote more competitive rates which reflected Hampton Roads' natural geographic advantages. And finally, the VPA launched an aggressive, sophisticated marketing program designed to get shippers and shipping lines to use our product. In addition, close cooperation between labor and management has produced for Hampton Roads a reputation as a port where cargo is moved quickly and efficiently. As a result of these initiatives, the port now finds itself with a problem, but it's a very good problem. And the problem is that we must expand our facilities considerably in order to accommodate future growth. By 1994, the Port of Hampton Roads is expected to handle more than 7 million tons of general cargo. This amount of tonnage will cause existing facilities to be operated beyond their capacity. We cannot afford to have facilities inadequate to meet our customers' needs because our customers will surely go elsewhere. And you can surely appreciate in the shipping business with mobile assets that as soon as you fail to perform, the private industry will certainly take their assets to other places where performance can be obtained. Fortunately, thanks to the leadership of the Governor and the General Assembly, the Commonwealth Port Fund provides a timely solution to this issue. The fund will now be available to ensure the capital expansion and preservation of Virginia's general cargo facilities. Furthermore, the Transportation Trust Fund will provide the vital improvements to Virginia's highway system, which links the ports to the markets that utilize the Port of Hampton Roads. The Commonwealth Port Fund will provide approximately $200 million to be invested in the harbor and river ports of Virginia over the next 10 years. The VPA has developed a detailed facilities and capital expenditure program which will ensure that the Commonwealth receives an adequate return on its investment, both in the short and the long term. For example, by the end of 1988, we will have spent $24.3 million of port fund appropriations on the following projects. At Newport News Marine Terminal, we have acquired 2 additional cranes and almost 5 acres of land. We plan to demolish an outdated pier and begin the development of an auto import facility. And coincidentally, you all, or many of you, will be visiting the Newport News Terminal after the presentation today, and we can show you some of the projects that we're working on. At Norfolk International Terminals, new projects include the acquisition of land north of the terminal to begin the construction of a 160-acre 4-berth addition to that facility. We will approximately double that facility within the next several years. At Portsmouth Marine Terminal, a land swap with the CSX Railway will facilitate development of an intermodal facility to allow the faster interchange of containers between rail and trucks. From this land exchange, VPA can now begin construction of a new 1,000-foot berth. An improved entrance complex is also planned for the terminal on land purchased with port fund appropriations. In addition to these projects funded by the Commonwealth Port Fund, another $50 million of projects supported by prior bond issues and general fund appropriations are also in various stages of completion. Together, these will increase existing port capacity from 4.4 million tons to 5.6 million tons by 1988. Upon completion of the 10-year expansion program, the Port of Hampton Roads will have capacity to handle 8 million tons of cargo annually by the late 1990s. In 1982, when I was first appointed to the Virginia Port Authority Board, general cargo tonnage was 2.5 million tons. The 5 million tons our port will handle this year would have seemed at that time an unobtainable goal. And yet hard work by the staff, our long and short shoremen, and the VPA board has made this goal a reality. For the 2-year period, 1985 and 1986, the Port of Hampton Roads was the fastest growing port in the United States, something that we are particularly proud of in an environment where overall tonnage in the world simply isn't growing. But in that environment, we were the fastest growing port in the country. In both years, our port substantially increased its market share, a vital factor in an area where, as I mentioned, we really have stable cargoes. Among other accomplishments during the last few years, our port has been the first port in the country to develop and utilize dual hoist high-speed container cranes that lift cargo at twice the speed of conventional container cranes. And there's a model of these cranes out in the lobby where you came in, and I think if you'll take a look at that, you'll agree with me that these are remarkable pieces of machinery. In addition, we were the first port to enter into a cost-sharing agreement with the federal government, which enabled Hampton Roads to begin harbor dredging under new federal regulation in March of 1987. This is many months earlier than any other port in the country. Finally, we were the first port to implement the Customs Automated Manifest System, a computerized system that allows 80% or more of the general cargo through Hampton Roads to be automatically released by Customs before it reaches the port facility. The Port of Hampton Roads is the largest exporting port in the country, the largest port in the country. The port is also one of the top generators of private sector jobs in the Commonwealth. Bulk commodity export and general cargo movement provides jobs to more than 120,000 Virginians, which is, I think you'll agree with me, a very considerable number. In order to maintain this vital economic base in our state, the Port of Hampton Roads must remain competitive with other U.S. ports, particularly those located on the East Coast. The Virginia Inland Port, or VIP, is an example of the port's continuing efforts to compete vigorously for jobs and cargo. This intermodal facility, which the governor has aptly dubbed the worst-kept transportation secret in the Commonwealth's history, this facility will be located on 150 acres near Front Royal, Virginia, and will attract truck traffic from a 200-mile radius and will transfer cargo to rail for transport between VIP and the marine terminals at the Port of Hampton Roads. During the first full year of operation, VIP is projected to handle 20,000 containers with 40,000 boxes projected for the next 2 to 3 years. The expected annual volume could exceed 1/2 million tons annually. Almost half of this volume is expected to be new cargo for our port, not just rearranging cargo we already have, but capturing new traffic, which is going to generate more jobs. Once again, financing for this $10 million facility will be provided by the Commonwealth Port Fund. In conclusion, Governor, the charge of the special legislation passed by the General Assembly in September of 1986 to the Port Authority was to prudently and effectively apply the Commonwealth Port Fund to viable, worthy projects that would advance Virginia's port system into the 21st century. We accept that charge and are committed to developing and maintaining a marketing program that will maintain and improve our port into the next century. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our presentation. I thank you for your attention. Thank you, Governor and Secretary Wise.
Thank you very much, Collister, and again, thanks to all of you who contribute so freely of your time and expertise from the private sector. And again, I do thank you, Bobby, not in humor but in sincerity, for the operations of the Virginia Port Authority, which has been, again, a real shining example of progress and economic growth within the Commonwealth, and I know the Governor will have some comments about how this has been such a selling point, such a stepping stone to the international markets, which has become a hallmark of now the second year of the administration, always moving forward. In introducing the next individual, it would now be appropriate to pay homage and compliments to all of the professionals represented in each aspect of transportation. who have given so much of their entire lives to their particular aspect of the program. I want to revert back for just one moment. One of the things that caught me in Ray Patel's presentation was the item about the efforts to make sure that as we expand our workforce, we give opportunity to all minorities. And I'm delighted that we actually are employing a few folks that didn't graduate from Tech or VMI. Right. Actually, we've had a few others in the minority hiring program who don't have that particular credential. But again, that is all meant in good humor to indicate those individuals from childhood who have felt the calling in that particular aspect of the transportation field. And perhaps no place is that more represented than in the field of aviation. I'm always a little intimidated, and if I'm beginning to sound tongue-tied, it's because whenever I talk about aviation, I know that I don't quite have down the jargon that these folks have used secondhand ever since they first got behind the controls of that airplane. But again, it does represent that kind of dedication that again has been freed to contribute fully to the Commonwealth's economy under the new transportation program, and finally having the financing that has allowed particularly aviation to come into its own in a way that prior to the action of the special session of the General Assembly, it had been something that a lot of folks would have liked to have seen more done about, but very little was able to be taken on. I would now like to introduce the head of the Department of Aviation on behalf of the board, Lenny Ellis as chairman of the board. Again, one of those people who've been up in the air ever since he could first sit behind the controls, and again, many of the board members representing that same kind of dedication. Lenny, are you speaking first? Fine. Thank you very much. Lenny Ellis.
Thank you, Secretary Watts. Good morning, Governor Blouse, members of the General Assembly, and members of the Virginia Transportation Boards. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct pleasure for me to be with you to provide an overview of airport improvement projects in the Commonwealth. These projects were made possible last September by the work of the Commission on Transportation of the 21st Century and the action of the General Assembly, which turned a new page in our history of Virginia by providing transportation agencies with the resource to respond to the challenge of the future. I have asked Ken Rowe, Director of the Department of Aviation, to provide you with an overview of aviation projects in Virginia. But before he begins, I would like to introduce the other members of the Virginia Aviation Board. Each of the board members serve a region of the state which is split according to planning districts. Our senior member of the board is Charles E. Beatley of Alexandria. Chuck is not only an aviation man, but he was the mayor of Alexandria, and he's a retired United Airlines captain and owner of Warrenton Airport. Next is Fred Snyder, and Fred, being from Virginia Beach, Fred is a retired Marine Corps pilot and businessman. Next we have Warren Wheeler. Warren is from Gloucester, Virginia, and is a Piedmont Airline captain and owns Wheeler Airlines. Next, Wayne Booth. Wayne is from Lynchburg, Virginia, and is a pilot and a businessman in Lynchburg. Next, Jim Edwards of Richland, Virginia. Jim is a pilot, a retired businessman, currently a member of the board of directors of several firms in Southwest Virginia. Two of our other members, Tony Dow of Richmond, who is the former executive director of the Richmond International Airport, and Morton Lester of the Lester Corporation in Martinsville, could not be with us today. Since 1963, Ken Rowe has served aviation in the Commonwealth. First, as the Assistant Director of the former Division of Aeronautics in the State Corporation Commission, and since 1984, as the Director of the Department of Aviation. We're also very proud to announce he is also currently serving as President of the National Association of State Aviation Officials. Governor, ladies and gentlemen, Ken Rowe.
Thank you, Lenny. Governor Bliles, members of the General Assembly, Virginia Transportation Board members, Virginia Port Authority members, Aviation Board members, ladies and gentlemen, one and all. Please allow me to share just a few slides with you today and review with you examples of the many airport improvement projects which are in various stages of construction as a result of the work of the Governor's Commission on Transportation in the 21st Century and the action of the General Assembly, which created the Commonwealth Airport Fund. With the advent of the Commonwealth Airport Fund, the Virginia Aviation Board held public hearings and revised their funding guidelines to encourage airport development. Virginia currently has 79 public use airports scattered across the state. 29 of these licensed public use airports are privately owned. 12 of these airports do receive air carrier service, and the remaining 67 are our general aviation airports, which provide numerous services to both the traveling public and to the communities they serve. We should also note that Virginia has 249 private-owned, private-use airports not shown here and are not eligible for state funding support, but do serve land developers, farmers, recreational flying, and isolated needs for air transportation in Virginia. Additionally, there are 46 hospital heliports located in Virginia. They provide most areas of Virginia with rapid medical evacuation service, and they are served not only by state police med flight helicopters, but also by Lifeguard 10 in Roanoke, Pegasus in Charlottesville, and Nightingale in the Tidewater area. We provide limited technical support, lighting, and safety items for these heliports in routine conduct of our business in the Department of Aviation. It seems that a day doesn't go by without new headlines about airport improvements made possible by the new Commonwealth Airport Fund established just 1 year ago. They tell us about a new airport currently under construction at Tazewell. They tell us about a new terminal building for Winchester. They tell us about new projects at Chesapeake, at Abington, a new passenger terminal at Roanoke. They also tell us about a new automated weather briefing station for pilots at Danville, just to mention a few. Our airports play a vital role in keeping Virginia's economy strong and growing. Here are a few interesting facts about both commercial and general aviation airports in the Commonwealth. Virginia's airports enhance the quality of life for our citizens. They provide an essential transportation link between individual communities, the Commonwealth, the nation, and remote parts of the world. They serve as gateways which enable the state's visitor and tourism industries to capitalize on the Commonwealth's greatest assets, its historic attractions, beautiful beaches, and magnificent mountains. They allow Virginia businesses to compete nationally and internationally, and they promote economic development. As you know, proximity to aviation services is among the important factors considered by businesses when making decisions about new plant locations and the expansion of existing plants. And finally, Virginia's airports generate local revenues, wages, and jobs. Our 67 general aviation airports stretch from Lee County Airport at Pennington Gap to Tangier Island Airport in the Chesapeake Bay, and from the Winchester Regional Airport at the top of Virginia to the Clarksville Airport on the North Carolina border. Virginia is home to over 2,700 aircraft which take off and land some 1.7 million times each year, conveniently serving 86% of our population. I might add, an estimated 75% of these 1.7 million flights are business related. Also, there are over 300 non-aviation related businesses who have aircraft based at our general aviation airports. Turning to our 12 commercial airports, we have had record growth in the number of passengers using Virginia's airports last year. Virginia's growth of 16.1% was well above the national average of 11% in 1986, and the passenger total will exceed 34 million in 1987. And that number is expected to grow to 62 million by the year of 2000. By comparison, back in 1960, we had just slightly over 5 million air passengers in the Commonwealth. We were also investigating, or we are investigating at the present time, the feasibility of establishing new regional airline service to Winchester and several other communities in Southwest Virginia to further enhance Virginia's air transportation system. Of significant importance today, we see no signs that the demand for aviation services is leveling off. That is why the creation of the Governor's Commission on Transportation in the 21st century was so timely. Prior to the action of the General Assembly last September, we could identify the future needs of aviation system in Virginia, but we were not in a position to adequately fund the anticipated needs. The General Assembly determined that the Commonwealth Airport Fund should be allocated to Virginia's airports based on this formula. You will note that 12 air carrier airports are allocated the largest share of the fund, making up 40% based on passenger enplanements. Of course, the reason for that is understandable. Not only are they our larger facilities, but they generally serve larger population bases and accordingly have greater needs. Virginia also has 6 designated reliever airports which receive special recognition because of their important role in diverting general aviation traffic away from larger air carrier facilities. The Leesburg and Manassas airports in Northern Virginia help relieve Washington National and Dulles. Hanover and Chesterfield in the Central Virginia area relieve Richmond, and Hampton Roads in Chesapeake help to relieve in the Norfolk or the Tidewater area. These relievers, along with the air carrier airports, receive another 40% of the pie, and the remaining 20% much more money. It means that in part the board could not provide funds for the needs in the system before. As an example, the state was unable to participate in the construction of the new terminal at Richmond, but now approximately 27% of the new terminal at Roanoke will be funded by the Commonwealth Airport Fund, as well as funding for a new terminal development in Lynchburg and Charlottesville. Another important point about the Commonwealth Airport Fund is that it has allowed the Department of Aviation to use aviation special fund monies to fund a much needed improved airport maintenance program and other specific safety related projects, such things as obstruction surveys, approach lighting systems, automated weather observation systems, and additional navigational aids have all been made possible. Our expanded obstruction survey program called PhotoSlope provides a visual record of obstructions to the approach surface of a runway. That's that imaginary line that aircraft arrive and depart from airports and must be maintained free of obstructions. This slide shows the Emporia Municipal Airport with obstructions at the end of runway 15 in the clear zone area. The Greensville Emporia Airport Commission reacted quickly to remove these obstructions utilizing the photographs obtained through the PhotoSlope process. As many of you know, Georgia Pacific corporate jets fly in and out of the Emporia Airport on a weekly basis. Time will not permit me to detail each project at every airport, but let me just say that this past February, the Virginia Aviation Board approved some 140 separate improvement projects at our system airports. Included in your folder is a copy of a news release which lists projects by airport and by region of the Commonwealth. I would like to point out some of the more significant projects underway in Virginia system airports. Looking here at the Winchester Airport, the board approved projects providing for $500,000 in aid to acquire land, relocate the access road, and build a new general aviation terminal in this area here. Next is Leesburg, one of Virginia's fastest growing general aviation airports. Here you can see part of the new industrial air park under construction. The Commonwealth Airport Fund did not provide funds for this industrial park, but we did provide funds for the new runway extension, condominium T-hangar taxiways, and land acquisition for the next extension project planned at the other end of the runway. This is Manassas Municipal Airport, our largest and busiest general aviation airport, one of the few general aviation airports in the country with parallel runways, and home to over 400 based aircraft, all paying local personal property taxes. Local, state, and federal aid totals over $1 million for the new apron and taxiways on the northeast side of the field located here. This slide is Culpeper County Airport and Industrial Air Park, showing a $5.5 million manufacturing plant, which, by the way, Governor, did not select North Carolina and did come to Virginia. This plant, which employs 180 people, is ideally situated off the end of the runway with direct access to the airport for its salesmen who use aircraft in selling their product. As a result of this project, the Aviation Board established special criteria to help fund 1/3 of the cost of industrial access taxiways. This is the Shenandoah Valley Airport. This airport has a slogan, "The little airport with the big connections." The Aviation Board has approved several projects for this airport, including a crash fire rescue vehicle, renovation of the air carrier terminal, and construction of a new general aviation terminal serving corporate users. This slide shows Charlottesville-Abermile Airport. In 1978, the year of airline deregulation, Charlottesville was served by one airline. Today it is served by 5. Passenger traffic has doubled in the last 9 years, and you can see from this slide the new general aviation apron and the new airline passenger automobile parking lot. 10 projects totaling $1.1 million, including new terminal expansion, were approved in February over a multi-year funding program. The Louisa Industrial Air Park, located at the newest system airport, dedicated on June 28th this year by Governor Bliles and FAA Administrator Don Engen. 3 firms were located in this industrial air park 2 years before the airport opened. This is an outstanding example of local initiatives to combine their airport with industrial development. Next is the Hanover Airport and Industrial Air Park, home for over 250 businesses. Projects were approved at Hanover for over $315,000, including land acquisition for a runway extension and other safety-related improvements. Chesterfield County Airport is shown here with a good view of its industrial air park. The board has recently approved $329,000 in aid for a variety of projects, including a terminal renovation project, the installation of obstruction lighting, and a much-needed ramp area our governor inspected just yesterday. This is Patrick Henry International Airport, one of our fastest growing airports. The Commonwealth Airport Fund provided over $200,000 for 9 projects, and the Airport Commission here at Patrick Henry is also undertaking a terminal study which will determine future requirements to meet the expected passenger growth. This is Norfolk International Airport, Virginia's 3rd largest air carrier airport with respect to both passengers and air cargo, a key facility in our airport system. Among projects approved by the board is the apron and terminal expansion, which will begin in this area, and projects totaling $19.6 million, with $2.7 million being provided from the Commonwealth Airport Fund. Next is Hampton Roads Airport, a private-owned general aviation designated reliever for Norfolk. Hampton Roads has 160 based aircraft and is one of only 26 reliever airports in the country that is privately owned. Because of its FAA designation of reliever status, it is eligible for federal aid but the Aviation Board had to supplement their needs with $260,000 of Commonwealth Airport funds for new projects to construct taxiways and ramp areas. Incidentally, Governor, the principal owner of this facility is Captain Henry Pascal, who turned 94 this year, was a World War I pilot, a member of the Virginia Aviation Hall of Fame, and meets with us regularly to plan the future of this airport. This is Marks Municipal Airport at Clarksville, Virginia, one of the many small community airports, but a very important facility because it serves the Russell Stover Candy Factory with its 400 employees, a Burlington Mills distribution center for two other local Burlington Mills facilities with 1,600 employees, and the Virginia Carolina Tobacco Warehouse, which, as you know, is a seasonal operation. Russell Stover picked this site because of its Virginia location, the local workforce, and available utilities. Part of the agreement which brought Russell Stover to Clarksville was the commitment on the part of the community to upgrade the airport so that Russell Stover officials could fly their corporate jet in from Chicago on a weekly basis. The Aviation Board approved $120,000 of Commonwealth Airport funds to reconstruct this runway and overlay the apron. Uniquely, this airport, along with the Hanover Airport in Hanover County, were a couple of airports that were developed in Virginia without federal funds, with state funding and local funding in order to meet industrial needs in the Commonwealth. This is Lynchburg Municipal Airport. Lynchburg is getting ready to build a new passenger terminal in this area. Phase 1 costs alone, which will include land acquisition, totals $2.9 million, and will receive a full state share of Commonwealth Airport funds. This airport is one we'll all recognize who made a visit there yesterday, which is Roanoke. And they recently opened bids for a new passenger terminal. It will be located in this area and is expected to handle up to 1 million passengers annually when it is completed in 1989. The Aviation Board has allocated $6.2 million of the total cost of $23.2 million for this project, and our governor delivered a huge check for this huge amount just yesterday during a visit to Roanoke. Finally, this is a view of our only new airport under construction at Tazewell County, Virginia. It will provide a safe, all-weather airport for that mountainous area and will require federal, state, and local funding of over $8 million. Phase 1 includes site preparation and access road alignment, funded in part by the federal and state aviation funding, and more significantly, also the Virginia Department of Transportation funded funds for the access road under the airport access funding process. In conclusion, I think you will agree that Virginia's airports are an economic advantage, and with the Commonwealth Airport Fund, a part of the Transportation Trust Fund, the Commonwealth's advantage will continue into the 21st century. On behalf of Virginia's aviation community, I want to thank Governor Baliles for this outstanding historic transportation initiative, and thank the Transportation Board and the Department of Transportation for their continuing support and management of the Transportation Trust Fund. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Again, the Commonwealth is indeed lucky to have such professionals available to carry out our programs. Ken is the head, by the way, of his national professional organization, which does assist us in keeping track of some of the federal and congressional action as far as funding, particularly of safety improvements of our airports. Before introducing the governor, because after all, governors do come and go, I had to do that on behalf of my former colleagues in the General Assembly, because I would like to introduce those colleagues, because they are in fact the ones who will be here year after year to make sure that the kind of initiatives that have been discussed and presented today are in fact carried out with the kind of sensitivity to providing for the public's needs for continued growth and economic development of the Commonwealth, but also with a sensitivity towards the best use of our public resources. and making sure that the kind of management initiatives that have been discussed are in fact carried out when you look at the bottom line. Therefore, I would like to introduce, first of all, members of the House of Delegates, Henry Maxwell. Good to see you here, Henry. Wally Stephen. And of course, Ellen Diamondstein. Ellen. Members of the Senate, Senator Bobby Scott. And I guess I don't have any better phrases than, and of course, Hunter Andrews. One other introduction, speaking about those folks who stay around and make sure that we carry out programs with due conscience for the public purse. May I introduce the Secretary of Finance, Secretary Stuart Connick, who fortunately... That's right, who fortunately has also been here to assist a number of governors. Governor, again, on behalf of all of the people, their dedication, their commitment, their professionalism, I would like to thank you for the leadership that you have provided to enable these people to carry out programs that, as you have so articulately, excuse me, hardly articulate on that word, so articulately expressed, so convincingly expounded throughout the Commonwealth, have provided that kind of leadership, that boldness of purpose to carry us forward into the 21st century in the transportation infrastructure which can make the economy of Virginia continue to grow and prosper. Again, on behalf of all of those dedicated individuals, thank you so much for your leadership. It couldn't have happened without you.
Thank you. Thank you, former Secretary Vivian Watts. To the members of the combined boards, and especially to my friends in the General Assembly, I want to say how much I appreciate your presence here today and your participation in this historic process during the past year. I especially want to pay tribute to Vivian Watts and Ray Peftel, who worked so long and so hard with me during this past year with my former colleagues in the General Assembly. And it is to those individuals who are here today and to those who could not be present that I wish to express my profound gratitude, not only for their friendship, but for their support and for their devotion to this Commonwealth and its future. There's a scene in The Music Man when Professor Harold Hill describes the first time all the great bands came to town on the very same historic day. This is sort of like that. It is a unique and interesting event. For the first time, the Virginia Aviation Board, the Virginia Port Authority, and the Virginia Board of Transportation have been brought together for a common purpose. And not one of you has been asked to buy a band uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentations and remarks heard this morning give ample evidence of the progress Virginia is making in a most critical area. And I cannot emphasize more strongly how important it is that we do so. Transportation. I've often referred to it as the lifeline to our economic future. It is. Transportation is as fundamental to our economy as the air is to our lives. This is no revelation. It has always been so. Indeed, the advancement and improvement of the methods of transportation have gone hand in hand with the general progress of society. The lesson is as old as human race's time on earth. Just as the Romans paved the Appian Way and enabled the expansion of their civilization, so too have we sought to find more efficient ways to move people and products. Carts, wagons, galleons, barges, canals, steamers, railroads,
highways, trucks, airplanes, container vessels, spacecraft. Each innovation, each improvement has brought progress. Now, having said what is patently obvious to this audience, I must also observe that as a nation, we seemingly ignore this most basic and undeniable of realities. Across America, the deterioration of our basic infrastructure, roads, airports, port facilities, and mass transit systems, saps our economic strength and leaves us unable to compete in world markets. This has happened not because people do not care, nor because they do not see the need to act, but because in a democracy, public expenditures require a public vote. Politics too often has failed our people in their enterprise. Too frequently we have lacked the courage to say, yes, this must be done, and yes, it will cost money. But in Virginia, as of a year ago, the Virginia General Assembly bit the bullet. The legislative membership did what was right and necessary for this Commonwealth to economically thrive and prosper. As the result of the September 1986 special session of the General Assembly, Virginia now has established the 21st Century Transportation Fund, an integrated transportation program of air, sea, mass transit, and road. It is a program to do more than sustain us. It is a program to move us ahead, to strengthen our economy, and improve the lives of our people. But it's also a program to enable us to do something else. And it is this point I wish to stress this morning. The 21st Century Transportation Fund empowers us to sell Virginia to the world. It enables us to compete. It enables us to win. Let me explain. There is a term occasionally used which would have driven my high school English teacher to the point of distraction. It's called multimodal. What that means, without the jargon, is that transportation today is the sum of many parts. Accordingly, each part must function efficiently if the whole is to function efficiently. I think Aristotle first said that. At any rate, the totality of transportation and how well the parts work together is playing a pivotal role in national economies throughout the world. As you know, the world contracts with each passing day. What this means economically, the private sector understands very well. For instance, within the last decade, the Sealand Corporation has invested more than $1 billion in capital expenditures to construct an integrated ship, rail, and truck transportation infrastructure in North America. Sealand intends to link Asian importers and exporters with markets in the United States, Europe, and other points throughout the Northern Hemisphere. Last year, Joseph Abele, chairman of the board and chief executive officer of Sealand, spoke in Tokyo before the Federation of Economic Organizations. In his remarks, Mr. Abele emphasized that the qualitative growth in world trade, meaning the speed, the reliability, and the efficiency with which cargo moves, is as important as the quantitative growth in trade. He also expressed, however, a concern with government, and let me quote it. Government policies must include a commitment to transportation infrastructure that can accommodate the technological and service revolutions occurring within our industry today. Our ability to innovate, develop, and refine transportation services is clearly limited by the willingness of the public sector to commit itself to transportation networks that will support and foster cargo growth. End of quote. You see, within the containerized transportation industry, entire areas of the world remain closed to the current revolution in transport. Many nations simply lack the basic technology needed to move containerized cargo between their docks and their inland population and industrial centers. Some regions of the world, such as South America and Africa, are only now just beginning to upgrade port facilities to handle any type of containerized cargo. Other regions have facilities for containers, such as in the nations of the Far East, but they lack the inland capacity to carry merchandise to and from the interior. In effect, The imperative of change has run headlong into the old familiar inertia of inaction. Inefficient facilities were not a major problem for the steamship lines of the 1950s and 1960s. Firms operated geographically circuitous routes, routes that relied more on historical trade lanes and ports located on natural tributaries to move their customers' cargo. Now, however, transportation companies have developed fast transit, door-to-door services using the most direct routes available. As a result, the limitations of inadequate transportation infrastructures throughout the world are being tested more severely and in more places than ever before. Efficient, integrated door-to-door service obviously cannot work if cargo shipments must be routed around congested highways, inadequate bridges, or other impediments. Now, for those of you who are anticipating where I'm headed with this, let me make my point. Just as those nations with developed, sufficient transportation systems have the edge on those nations that do not, the same applies to the states. Our transportation improvements, in other words, are a selling point for international commerce. They are a selling point at a time when competition between the states for economic growth is keener than ever. Shippers and manufacturers, firms looking for sites to locate, all evaluate their business decisions in a cold, objective fashion. They look at the United States as a market. They take out a map, measure how long it takes to get their products to port, and then estimate how long it will take to get them from the port to either the buyer or the seller. In terms of siting decisions, business leaders not only evaluate the movement of products, they also carefully examine the movement of people, their people. And on that score, the efficiency of our airports stand as a major factor in their calculations. We already have plenty to show. We have the fastest growing port in the nation, a port whose loading and docking facilities, as you heard, because of the 21st Century Transportation Fund, will be second to none on the East Coast. We also have some of the fastest growing airports in the nation, at Washington Dulles, at Roanoke Regional, at Norfolk and Patrick Henry, and at Byrd Field in Richmond. The remarkable growth at Washington Dulles will now be addressed by the new Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. New facilities will be built and improvements made. As for Virginia's other air centers, the 21st Century Transportation Fund has established the Commonwealth Airport Fund to help support their needed improvements so as to ensure the safety and reliability of air travel. These are selling points for Virginia. But we also have something else. Virginia can sell its road construction program, a 12-and-a-half-year, $10 billion effort. For anyone who doubts Virginia's resolve to have efficient interior transportation, we have something to show them. No promises, no proposals, no pie-in-the-sky dreams. We have real projects in the works with the plans drawn, and we have the money to pay for them. That's something we can sell. That's something we can build Virginia's future on. In January 1986, during the State of the Commonwealth Address to the General Assembly, I challenged the legislators to show that we are a generation of action and prepare Virginia's transportation system for the 21st century. I cited some of Virginia's most urgent, critically needed transportation projects. Projects that, for the lack of funds, were gathering dust on the shelf. The legislators accepted my challenge, and today I want to revisit that list of projects to show what a difference a year can make. As I said in the State of the Commonwealth Address, this is not a definitive list of our most pressing needs. It is, however, a clear indication of how far we have come thanks to the General Assembly. Route 28. This is one of the most congested roads in Virginia, and before the special session of the General Assembly, nothing was happening. Very limited funds were available for this critical project in Northern Virginia. The special session provided resources for preliminary engineering for its 14-mile length and enabled the creation of a special taxation district. This district, the first of its kind, will serve as a source of public-private cooperation dedicated to generating needed additional revenue. Private revenue, coupled with public funds, will make this road a reality. The Commonwealth Transportation Board has already committed $28.4 million to this project. Once the final touches are put on the creation of the special tax district, construction can begin almost immediately. Indeed, the dimensions of what can be accomplished can be seen in the increase of Northern Virginia construction funds from $17 million a year to almost $77 million annually, not to mention increases in mass transit assistance from $21 million to $55 million a year. Route 7, Round Hill Bypass. This 1.7-mile project in Loudoun County would not have been built in this century had we not passed the transportation program. It is now scheduled to be put out for bids in about 18 months. The estimated $3.8 million needed for construction of a 2-lane road on a 4-lane right-of-way will provide needed relief to traffic congestion on this highly traveled Northern Virginia artery. Route 23, Powell Valley relocation. This project in Wise County would have consumed virtually all of the funds for the entire Bristol district for the next 7 years without the 21st Century Transportation Fund. When I visited this road during the campaign, all the work on the project was stopped. Today, a $23.7 million, 2.5-mile project is under construction to correct a major landslide, with completion anticipated in early 1989. In addition, another $2.3 million in new funds have been earmarked for paving 4.5 miles of the road to make it a 4-lane facility. That project is tentatively scheduled to begin in less than 6 months. In Southwest Virginia, the long-awaited completion of this project will be of major benefit to the motoring public, who rely so heavily on good roads to cross this beautiful but difficult terrain. Moreover, for the first time, a north-south link will carry traffic through these hills of far southwest counties of Virginia. Lynchburg-Madison Heights Bypass, Route 29. This much-needed bypass in central Virginia will finally become a reality, with funds provided by the special session. Once again, before the special session, there was no hope of building this highway in the foreseeable future. Today, preliminary engineering is already underway for the 13.5-mile project, with construction costs pegged at $60.5 million. Lebanon Bypass. Bids to begin work on 1.6 miles of the eastern section of the road were received in August, and construction will begin next month on this $5 million Southwest Virginia project, beginning 5 years earlier than previously anticipated because of the additional resources provided by the special session. Bluefield Bypass. This Southwest Virginia project was not even in the Virginia Department of Transportation's financial plans before the special session. Now the final 1.8-mile section is scheduled to be advertised early next year, with the estimated $12 million needed for construction provided as a result of the special session. Route 58, Suicide Strip between Cortland and Emporia. As you heard this morning from the Commissioner, widening to 4 lanes of this treacherous stretch of road, the most notorious in Virginia, is expected to be completed in 1993 at a cost of more than $25 million. Before the special session, it would have been the year 2010 before this critical Southside Virginia project could have been constructed. All the right-of-ways have been acquired and construction on one segment is underway, and the overall construction planning process is now being completed. George P. Coleman Bridge. Gloucester County is the fastest growing county in Virginia. Gloucester is in fact one of the fastest growing counties in America. That growth, along one of Virginia's oldest rights-of-way, Route 17, is taking its toll on the 2-lane Coleman Bridge. It is a very bad problem. but one which few expected action on anytime soon. Yet, as a result of the special session, $6 million have been committed for preliminary engineering, including studies that are currently underway to select the location for another crossing of the York River. The cost of the new crossing is expected to range from $50 to $170 million, depending on the location recommendations and decision. Relief for Gloucester County is now on the horizon. Route 60, widening south of Richmond. Widening of congested Midlothian Turnpike to 6 lanes all the way from Richmond to Route 147, Huguenot Road, will be completed about a year from now, at least 3 years before construction could have even begun without the special session funds. Estimated construction cost for the 2.9 miles of work currently underway is $2.9 million. Route 10, widening south of Richmond. Before the special session, it would have been nearly the year 2000 before construction could begin for 2 additional lanes on this heavily traveled commuter road, and money for actual construction was a question mark. Now, funds for construction will be available as a result of the special session. Preliminary engineering is already underway for sections of the 8-mile stretch from Chippenham Parkway to Route 1, and construction could begin as early as 1989. Route 29, widening north of Charlottesville. It would have been 1990 before construction funds were available for less than 2 miles of this project, and the next century before construction could begin on the remainder. Now, as a result of the special session, construction could begin as early as 1988 on the 7 miles between Charlottesville and Airport Road at an estimated cost of nearly $15 million. In addition, funds were available for an environmental impact study of the eastern, central, and western alternate routes for a Charlottesville bypass. Route 220 at Eagle Rock. Money was not simply available for work on this needed project at any time in the foreseeable future. Now, more than $4 million in funds from the special session have been earmarked to close the 2.7-mile, 4-lane gap between Interstate 81 and Eagle Rock. The project is expected to be advertised for construction early next year. Route 250 between Waynesboro and Stanton. This project would have required almost all of the funds available to the entire Stanton district without the special session. Now, an additional $4 million to widen to 4 lanes the final 2 miles of this heavily traveled primary road will be available. The additional lanes are expected to be opened in about a year. Route 664 connector, Bowers Hill. The special session provided nearly $10 million in state matching funds for Virginia's share of the cost of this critically needed project, the total cost of which is about $100 million. This road, built to interstate specifications, will complete the loop linking all the cities of Hampton Roads. It would have required the delay of virtually all primary road projects in the Suffolk District to come up with a state share without the special session. Now construction is continuing on one section, while preliminary engineering continues on all other sections. Indeed, before the special session, only $23.8 million would have been allocated for road construction in the Suffolk District. Now the amount is approximately $103 million. As I said in the State of the Commonwealth Address, this is a short list of critical needs. There are literally hundreds of transportation problems like these all over the Commonwealth, and there are hundreds of projects now underway. Now, if you take all of what we're doing in the transportation programs, will that solve all of our transportation problems? Of course not. But in contrast to prior years, we're moving ahead, dramatically and definitely. Actually, we've only been collecting revenues for 8 months, and we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish together in such a short time. Moreover, Virginia's ports now have a 10-year, $250 million capital improvement program that has moved from a plan to a reality. Airports in the Commonwealth, faced with $150 million of documented needs over the same period of time, can now move forward with support from the state. Tangible support such as a $6.2 million 3-year commitment to the Roanoke Regional Airport announced yesterday. And that's not to mention the $1 million check I'm about to hand over to Sam Sandler later this morning to support Norfolk International Airport's capital improvement program. And I'm advised that I can tell Tom Moss there's more to come. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of talk going around about competing, particularly in world markets. Just 3 days ago, the new trade figures were released. It was a familiar refrain. It was just reported that for the 4th month in a row, the merchandise trade deficit soared to $16.5 billion in July. Chances are that when 1987 concludes, the trade shortfall would be the highest ever in our country. So what can we do about it? Congress controls trade legislation and national policy. So how can a single state improve its position? The answer lies in Virginia's transportation program. Earlier this year, when I traveled to China, I prepared exhaustively for the various business meetings I attended. I also took a map. In fact, this map. I showed my host where Virginia is. I showed them that we are the mid-Atlantic gateway to America, centered on the East Coast, within a day's drive of 60% of the nation's population. Then as I proceeded to expound on other points, I noticed that the Chinese were still looking at the map. Try as I did to divert their attention to other subjects, they kept still looking at the map. They know what their interests are. They know that they need the most efficient point at which to enter the massive East Coast market for buying and selling in this country. And when they saw the map, they knew that the access point is Virginia. But we need to do more than sit back and benefit from our fortuitous geography. We must be able to show prospective customers and investors that we have more than the best location. We must be able to show them that we have a transportation system capable of moving people and products inland and across the Commonwealth and into Middle America. Thanks to the 1986 special session of the Virginia General Assembly, we can do just that. And when I leave in 2 weeks for our trade mission to Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, you can bet I'm going to take some more of those maps. But I'm also going to take the message that I've given to you here today, that by land, sea, rail, or road, you can't do better than Virginia. One last word. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to also thank you individually and collectively for the many unpaid hours you have devoted to the service of this Commonwealth. Our success to date has been greatly dependent on the expertise and dedication each member brings to solving the challenges before us. I am personally very appreciative of your contributions, and I know the citizens of Virginia share my sentiments fully. Thank you.
Governor, I must say, despite my flippant comment, that I know I'm speaking for everybody here in this room, that your mark on Virginia's history will be indelible. Again, thank you. Now, if I might, if I could have a little assistance from those that had planned the agenda for this meeting. I understand we now have a check presentation, or are there also some other things that...
Let's call Tom Moss.
Okay. Tom, we are delighted to have you join us. Tom Moss, member of the House of Delegates, of course. And Majority Leader.
Are you by yourself?
I'm behind Stanley.
Here's Sam Sandler. Would you come forward? Ladies and gentlemen, of course, where air travel is concerned, safety must be our highest priority. The reliability of commercial flights quite simply depends upon it. But neither reliability nor safety can be purchased with a wish, as all of us so clearly understand. And the comprehensive capital plan for the Norfolk Airport demonstrates their commitment to the future of Hampton Roads. And in willingness to prepare for the future, I'm happy to report that you have an ally in the Virginia General Assembly. Because, as you know, thanks to the actions of the legislature in that historic session, the Transportation Fund was created for the assistance of airports in our Commonwealth. And if Tom Moss and Sam Sandler, the chairman of the Norfolk Port and Industrial Authority, would step forward, I would like to present them with a negotiable check from the Commonwealth Airport Fund, thanks to the General Assembly and to the people of Virginia, to support aviation in the Norfolk region. It is a check for $1 million.
And there's more to come, Ryan.
I think the most efficient way to handle the remaining details, Bill, if you would step forward and tell everyone what the next order of business is.
First, I'd like to extend an invitation to everyone in the room to join us for a buffet lunch that will be in this room. It will begin when we return from the I-664 dedication ceremony.